Hey, good day, good day, good day. Welcome to the Dr. Jeff Experience. So glad to have you on today. It's rainy Tuesday night in the A, but it's all sunshine and blue skies here on the Dr. Jeff Experience. We're going to be talking about something that is near and dear to me. You've heard me bring different people on that talked about this particular subject. We're going to be talking about pollution and the effects it has on the body. Um, this is near and dear to me because uh, I've had to deal with so many people in our lives that um, had to deal with sicknesses and illnesses. And we just don't want to see that any longer. Uh, it was a pastor that said to me one time before that we are digging our graves with our teeth. And I think that's so true. That's so true. So tonight we want to talk about it some more. We've talked about it, and tonight we're going to talk about it even some more about the importance of eating right and the pollution. I mean, this pollution thing is is huge. So dealing with a few technical things here. Let me get some stuff straight and get away from these echoes that I'm having. It's always technical stuff. But guys, we welcome you. We welcome you. I got some videos I want to show you tonight to demonstrate what I'm talking about. We're going to go through some. We're going to go through some things, um, some medical stuff, and we're going to bring it all tied in because we want to talk about the effects of pollution on the body. Now, I know a lot of you right now are getting ready to plant flowers and plant your seeds like myself. You always hear me talking about my trees, my fruit trees, and my fruits and vegetables. And the important part of that is the number one thing that you want to do whenever you plant stuff is you want to make sure that you have good dirt. You want to make sure you have good dirt. You want to make sure you have good soil. And it's a good thing to go and test your soil. Okay, go and test your soil. There's a number of places you can go and you can have your soil tested. You want to make sure that you don't have any contaminants in the ground. Um, it's important. It's important for that. Um, so yeah, it looks like we got everything going. If you can hear me, let me know. I want to make sure everybody's good. If you can comment, let me know. I want to make sure that you are able to comment with no problem. I want to make sure you hear me with no problem. So let me know. Give me a thumbs up, all that kind of stuff before we get started. There we go. Okay, everybody. Okay. All right. Wifey, she can hear me well. Pam, hello. How you doing? Okay. Want to make sure everybody is in and good. Okay. All right. All right. All right. Well, let's get started here. The first thing I want to go over is I want to just give you a little background on our body. I mean, a lot of times we forget what this body is made of. It's such a it's not really a complex system, but it is. But the good thing about it is that the way God made this body is that it will heal itself if we allow it to. It will literally heal itself. Um, but tonight I want to go over it in a little more detail and just talk about what this human body is made up of. Um, and number one, here we go. That's what I was looking to do. All right. So the human body. What is this human body made of? It's composed of various biological elements, including cells, tissues, organs, and organ systems. And here's a breakdown. Now, I am not a medical doctor, but I do research. Okay, let me put this out at the offset. The outset, I'm sorry. So cells are the basic and structural functional units of life. Okay, there are many types of cells in the body, and each with its own specific function. Examples include muscle cells, nerve cells, and blood cells. And you'll understand why I'm getting in detail about this once we get into some of the things that are out there in the world that are affecting our health in a negative way. Then we have not only have cells, but we have tissues. And tissues are groups of similar cells that work together to perform a specific function. There are four main types of tissues in the human body. You got the epithelial tissue. It covers the body's surfaces and lines its cavities. You've got the connective tissue, which provides support and structure to the body. You've got the muscle tissue, which is responsible for movement. And then you've got the nervous tissue, which facilitates communication between parts of the body. So look how complex we're dealing with here. Okay. Um, how complex of a situation we're dealing with when we deal with this body. And then we've got the organs, very important organs. Organs are composed of two or more types of tissues and have specific functions. Examples include the heart, the lungs, the brain, your liver, and your kidneys. Then you have the organ systems. And organ systems are groups of organs that work together to perform complex functions necessary for life. Examples include the respiratory system, the circular system, the nervous system, the digestive system, and the immune system. And then you have chemical elements. At the chemical level, the human body is primarily made up of oxygen, carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, calcium, and phosphorus, along with smaller amounts of other elements like potassium, sulfur, sodium, chlorine, and magnesium. Now, these elements are essential for the structure and function of biological molecules such as proteins, carbohydrates, lipids, and nucleic acids. Overall, I say all this to say that the body is a complex and highly organized system with each component playing a vital role in maintaining optimal health. And any interference in any of those things can throw the body off. And we're going to see what exactly that entails tonight. But we want to talk about pollution and the effects that it has on the body. The pollution of all sorts. Air pollution, contaminants that go into the groundwater, um, pesticides that go on our fruits, our vegetables, and in our meats and fish. See, when we have um, runoff in the our rivers and our streams, it gets to the fish. We're going to see about how in some nations they don't even eat the foods that are allowed here in America. Okay, I'm going to show you short video about that. But pollution can have a significant adverse effect on the human body, impacting both physical health and overall well-being. Okay, and we're going to go over some of that. But before I do that, I want to show you guys a short video, if you don't mind, that deals with what exactly we're talking about tonight. And let me see if I could bring this up. Here we go. Look at this.
Ben Tracy goes in
I want you to see this. Let me start it from the beginning.
Part 2 in our series on the safety of America's food. There's a long list of chemicals and additives that are allowed in the U.S., but are banned in Europe and other places over health concerns. CBS's Ben Tracy goes in depth to look at the effort in one state to make what every American eats safer.
Christina Ochoa often worries if the food she's feeding her two young kids is safe.
A lot of salt.
Even after carefully reading ingredient labels.
Some ingredients, I have no idea what they are, how to pronounce them. I want the best for my children, and I would think that as a society, we want the best for our children.
There are more than 10,000 chemicals and additives allowed in food in the U.S., often in small amounts, but many have not been evaluated by the FDA in decades. The majority are safe, but some chemicals allowed here have been banned overseas after research has linked them to cancer and developmental or behavioral issues.
We need to put the F back into the Food and Drug Administration.
Congresswoman Jan Schakowsky introduced a bill requiring the FDA to review certain chemicals that are banned overseas and to close what's known as the GRAS loophole, chemicals generally recognized as safe. This allows companies to skip an extensive safety review when adding many new chemicals to food.
Is the food industry basically policing itself?
I would say yes. And when you look around the world and you see what other countries are doing to protect their consumers, we are far behind.
CBS News has obtained a copy of proposed legislation in California that would make it the first U.S. state to ban 5 common chemicals, including potassium bromate, from all foods sold, distributed, or made there.
They're going to have to change their recipes, get rid of these chemicals, and hopefully that's something that's going to have impacts far beyond our borders here in the state of California.
Christina Ochoa says the FDA needs to do more.
We're trusting them, and this is the food that is feeding our future. And I want them to be held to a higher standard.
Now, in response, the FDA tells us their scientists keep up to date on food safety research, but it says it's also the responsibility of the food industry to make sure the substances they use are safe. Nora?
Wow. So you saw that. You saw it for yourself. This Food and Drug Administration, as one of the people said, we need to put the F back in food. In some countries, you see how many ingredients here in America. There's over 100,000 ingredients. I think they said that are legal in certain other places. Now, those are just a portion of the ingredients that go into our foods, and they sneak a lot into our foods. As you saw, a lot of us don't even realize that they're in our foods, but food labels are very important. Food labels are very important. One of the things that I deal with now is if I don't understand what it is or what it does, I don't buy it. Okay? Food labels are very important to read. You got buy tryptophan, food, whatever. Listen, man, you need to buy things that you know where it comes from. And you need to think to yourself, if I put this in my body, if I put this in my mouth, how does it affect me? Does it give me life? Does it add to those things that I talked about to help those elements of the body? Does it help it to function well? Does it give me life? I was talking to somebody and they were talking about a family member who was suffering with, really bad breath. And I asked them, I said, well, what do they eat? What's their diet consist of? And it was a lot of meats, a lot of fried foods, a lot of, dead products. And I made the statement. I said, well, a lot of that is rotten flesh in their gut. And all that rotten flesh in their gut is going to come out through their mouth. I mean, you could use all the kind of toothpaste and all that kind of stuff, but everything starts in the gut. Our gut is our second brain. Our stomach is our second brain. So, what you put in, it has an adverse effect if it's not good for us, especially things when it has all those ingredients. And pollution is killing not just the planet, but it's killing us. Okay. Here's some of the ways that pollution can affect the body. The respiratory system, air pollution, particularly from fine particle matter, Um, it's this thing called PM 2.5, ozone, nitrogen dioxide, sulfur dioxide, and carbon monoxide. It can lead to respiratory problems such as irritation of the respiratory tract, exacerbation of asthma and other respiratory conditions, increased risk of respiratory infections, reduced lung infection function, development of worsening of chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, which is COPD, and lung cancer. And now, unfortunately, we see a lot of the results of pollution through what's known as environmental racism, because we see a lot of factories and plants that rise up. Yeah, secondhand smoke also, Kathy, that's a good thing. It was not a good thing, but that's a good answer. We see these factories that give off all of these type of pollution in poor and minority neighborhoods. I never forget, I was watching 60 Minutes, and they had a special about what was happening in Mississippi. And there were people that live near this pig farm and chicken farm, and they had the big sprinkler systems that would shoot out water. And some of the kids were playing around that land, and they would get water in their face. And they found out that water that was coming out of that sprinkler was actually wastewater, and they were watering the surrounding grass with the wastewater. And of course, that was in the atmosphere, so people were getting sick. And I know people who have lived near neighborhoods that had industrial plants there, and they've had problems with their respiratory system. But not just their respiratory system, but you look at the cardiovascular system and the way that pollution deals with that. Pollution, especially fine particle matters, and pollutants like nitrogen dioxide and sulfur dioxide, they can contribute to cardiovascular issues such as increased risk of heart attack and strokes, hypertension, high blood pressure, arteriosclerosis, hardening of the arteries, um, arteriosclerosis, I'm sorry, irregular heartbeats, inflammation, and oxidative stress, which can damage blood vessels and promote clot formation. Yeah, Karen, that's it. Asbestos causes lung disease. And how many of our uncles and fathers, and even some of the women who have worked in plants or worked in places where they've later found out that it was filled with asbestos. And so it's very important for us to be on top of this. Some people will say, "Oh, Jeff, you sound like a tree hugger now, or you sound like one of these crazy environmentalists." Well, guess what? We ought to be an environmentalist if we want to live. How many of us have had, I know that I've had some family members who lived in a cancer cluster. And, I've attended so many funerals for my family who lived in this area where there were power plants and everything else there. And we got to do something about this. That's why I say, if you're going to buy your own food, raise your own foods, then get your soil tested and invest in above ground planting, raised bed planters. Get yourself some raised bed planters. Yeah, lead in water or paint in homes. Look at what's happening in Detroit and Flint, Michigan. Flint, Michigan still is having problems with their water. Still having problems, and it hurts us in poor and minority neighborhoods, and that's why I'm talking about this tonight. I want to show you another video. Just bear with me for a moment, but in my research, I saw that this is very important for us to know, and I want to bring you information that's good for the soul here. So give me a minute. Let me get this to
Ben Tracy goes in depth to look at the effort.
one. and I hope you're getting something out of this. This is what killed me right here.
Most Americans want to believe that the United States is the gold standard of clean food. But that belief may not hold up to scrutiny.
I want you
From
to do this.
unsanitary practices in mass production to the addition of dangerous chemicals, countries have good reason to give the side eye to imported foods claiming to be USDA approved. That's right. This week we're talking about American foods that have been banned by other countries. But before we get started, be sure to subscribe to the Weird History Food channel. Then leave a comment and tell us what other world food facts you would like to know more about. Now let's see how wrong the rest of the world really is.
Hey, Marilyn. Glad you listened.
Since the dawn of Skittles,
So
there have been
listen to this.
rumors about the dangers of eating them. Every one of us heard at least one classmate claim that the red ones make you sterile, and the yellow ones, they give you cancer. Turns out, it might be worse than that. First of all, your classmate wasn't wrong. The dyes known as Yellow 5 and Yellow 6 have been linked to hives and hyperactivity in children. Sweden and Norway have banned the candies out of concern. The European Union will most likely be banning Skittles at the end of the year, having already swapped out some of the dye for more natural flavors. This is because of something called titanium dioxide, which can be found making the colors pop across the rainbow. Research linked titanium dioxide to damaged DNA, which can lead to cancer. While Europe may be ahead of the Skittles awareness curve, America is quickly catching up. In May of 2021, the Environmental Working Group asked the FDA to categorize titanium dioxide as toxic. And yes, before you ask, right now the FDA says it's okay to consume some of that chemical compound.
That's all
You can
FDA.
taste the rainbow, but just in
They say
moderation.
it's okay.
California is home to an ongoing lawsuit against Mars Inc., the parent company of Skittles. The lawsuit claims Skittles are not only toxic, but are unfit for human consumption. So maybe for now, play it safe. Just go have some Swedish fish instead.
Look at this. Bread. Bread. Regular bread.
Ever looked at a piece of crusty French baguette, be it in cartoon or in real life? But let's be honest, it was probably in the hands of Pepe Le Pew, and think, I can't make a sandwich with that. As great as we talk about the invention of sliced bread, a lot of European countries have actually banned much of what you'd find on America's wide grocer shelves. That's because we make a lot of our bread not just with grain, but with a variety snap packs worth of additives,
Look at
like
this.
azodicarbonamide, for
I can't even
example,
pronounce
which helps bleach flour and strengthen dough. Fun fact about azodicarbonamide, it's also used in a spectrum of industrial products, including yoga mats. Downward dogs.
So next time
The
you
European
make a
Union
sandwich,
is really against the idea
you're
of
making
its
it
citizens
with
eating yoga mat
yoga
material
mats.
and has banned their use in food products.
No pork.
Pork, the other white meat, is a staple of American meats, along with chicken, fish, and beef. From bacon to ham, hot dogs to pork chops. American meat eaters consume about 67 pounds of pig per person every year. Soo-wee, my heart is stopping. Don't get us wrong, other nations indulge in swine just as much, if not more, than Americans. So why doesn't the U.S. export scores of succulent bacon-bearing boars? Well, it turns out America adds a lot of chemicals during processing. Ractopamine in particular is used in many pig farms to raise porkier porkers.
Doesn't even sound good.
Ractopamine, which we put a dash of in a lot of foods, has been banned in 160 countries, which all consider the drug unsafe for human consumption.
100.
This in turn has led to a prohibition of pork exports across the world. The EU hasn't touched the stuff since outlawing ractopamine in 2009. China and Russia have been ractopamine-less since 2013. Maybe that's because ractopamine has the same effects as an intoxicant on humans and can cause tachycardia, headaches, and muscle spasms if consumed in large enough quantities. But it is a small price to pay for a perfect piece of the pork.
No ribs for us this summer.
Hygiene in America often comes down to dousing stuff in a chlorine bath and calling it FDA approved. And chicken is no exception. Pathogen reduction treatments, or PRTs, refer to the use of different chemicals to destroy harmful microbes on raw meat. Somewhere along the line, American food regulators decided a quick chlorine shock was the best way to kill salmonella and other bacteria on uncooked poultry. Chlorine marinade. And look, it's not that the EU is against taking a long gulp from the public pool now and then. In fact, the risks posed by chlorine consumption are relatively low. The bigger concern is that the chlorine baths are just an eye-burning band-aid on a larger problem, the tip of the beak, so to speak. They're worried that the PRTs are insufficient to deal with more than just the normal bacteria and don't get at a potential contamination from things like low-quality feed to unsanitary coops on farms. The EU called the chlorine rinse an easy fix, arguing no chemical rinse will ever remove all bacteria from meat heavily contaminated as a result of poor hygiene. That hurts extra to hear it from the French.
Mountain Dew.
Mountain Dew is the closest any soft drink has come to being fully weaponized. But did you know in Austria and Norway, the soda is outright banned? That's because Mountain Dew's signature Chernobyl radiant hue comes from tartrazine, also known as yellow 5. And if your ADHD hasn't kicked in yet, you'll remember that color and number from the Skittles section earlier. It's been linked to headaches, hyperactivity, and the desire to be annoying to other people. Ironically, the qualities that make Mountain Dew a soda non gratis in other countries is exactly what the brand promotes: a frenetic, overcaffeinated lifestyle. Do the do. Baja Blast. Woo-hoo. And while you might be able to find Mountain Dew in Europe, it's going to hit a little different. That's because Europe spent exactly 2 years in the 90s riding the dew before discontinuing it. What is being sold as Mountain Dew in the EU as a recipe closer to the original carbonated beverage, as created by Tennessee beverage bottlers Barney and Ollie Hartman in the 1940s. The original Mountain Dew was meant as a whiskey mixer, with a name coming from the affectionate Scottish term for moonshine. It'll tickle your innards, is what the old ads used to read. No lies detected here.
Yahoo! Mountain Dew!
Little Debbie. Little Debbie.
Little Debbie has been providing Americans with comfort snack food since the 1960s, with their variety of zebra cakes, star crunches, nutty bars, fudge rounds, and cosmic brownies. But their big claim to fame, as anyone who has ever had their lunch packed by a parent can attest, is the Little Debbie Swiss Rolls, a mixture of rich chocolate cake and butter-creamy filling. Over 900 million cartons of Little Debbie products are shipped each year, but none of those cartons go anywhere near Austria or Norway. Blame those rascally additives, yellow 5 and red 40. Swiss rolls contain 32 milligrams of dye per product, and in those quantities, they've been shown to have an adverse effect on children. And we're not just talking about causing hyperactivity, although one study found that cutting all artificial food coloring from diets may be 1/2 as effective as prescribing kids Ritalin. And while we can't prove there's a direct connection between artificial food coloring and cancer, they do cause damage to white blood cells, causing them to mutate after only 3 hours. Exposure to these dyes could cause tumor cells to multiply way more rapidly. For that reason, researchers say a high chronic intake of food colorings throughout the entire life is not advisable. If only they weren't so delicious. Surprisingly, you can buy Little Debbie Swiss rolls in the EU, but they come with warning labels advising parents of the potential dangers to kids. You know, like cigarettes.
That's okay. Look at this.
When you hear the words banned breakfast cereal, you're probably imagining one of the countless kid-focused.
So let me stop it there. So guys, you see that it's important for us to deal with our foods that we put in our bodies. You saw some of those are banned in certain countries. They just don't even allow, like, you're not even gonna bring this in here. And you saw some of those chemicals and what happens. Yeah, that's a good comment. Artificial sugars are unhealthy. We must make sure medicine, make food our medicine and avoid making medicine our food, as you always say. Yeah, you always hear me say that. Listen, make food your medicine so that you don't have to make medicine your food. Okay? Man, I tell you, some of the things that I do now, If I don't know where it came from, for the most part, I don't touch it. I'm gonna let me see how I can ease about this because I don't want to be too controversial. But there's a lot of things that we do in church that I don't understand sometimes. One of the biggest things about a funeral is that, we'll do a funeral and we'll come back to the repast, or we'll do the repast, and the food at the repast is the same type of foods that caused some of the problems with the person that we just buried. Fried chicken, yellow rice, sugary red juice or punch, lemonade. Um, Now I give you another one. Y'all don't have my email, so I won't hear from you. But on first Sundays, or whenever you do communion in church, in some churches, because some churches drink wine, but in some churches, you get that little plastic thing with that little red juice in there, that wafer. Do y'all know what's in there? Because I don't. Anything that's mass produced and given to us, I'm leery of it. Okay. It's a good movie to look at. Is They Clone Tyrone, and you'll see what I'm talking about. But I'm gonna bring my own bread and my own beverage to take communion with on the first Sunday, and it's the elements that are representative of what we're doing anyway. I mean, the elements are not going to save you, so that's a whole nother story for another day. So you saw some examples of what I'm talking about, and I'm show you another one before we get out of here. But I'm talking about pollutants and also global warming, but those pollutants that are in our foods that go into our bodies that have negative and adverse effects, not just on us, but our children. Okay, we talked about the cardiovascular system and pollution, but the neurological system, okay, and some of those pollutants that we just saw on that video have a lot to do with the adverse effects of our neurological system. Like some of those pollutants, because that's what they are, they're pollutants, including heavy metals like lead and mercury, as well as certain pesticides and industrial chemicals can negatively impact the nervous system, leading to cognitive impairments, developmental delays in children, neural behavior disorders, or neurodegenerative diseases such as Parkinson's and Alzheimer's. We see that a lot now. Before, we didn't see that years ago because we grew our own foods. We didn't have an onset of or such a large amount of pesticides. And, in order to grow food at a rapid pace, you got to inject it so that it can grow much faster than the natural process. I think who was that? Kathy Alexander said KFC chicken grown in a plastic dish. Yeah, they'll do anything that they can to expedite the growth of food because you got more buffets now. You got people who eat more, and we just got more people. But everybody wants everything quick, fast, and in a hurry. No one sits down for the most part and raises their food. But the good thing is you're starting to see more and more people now having their own chickens with their own cows and beef and all that kind of stuff, so that they are now more conscious of eating more healthy. But the problems with the problems that we're having with growing the food so quickly, with so many ingredients that are not good for us, is bad for the neurological system, cardiovascular system, the respiratory system, but also the reproductive system. Get this: Exposure to certain pollutants, such as endocrine disrupting chemicals found in pesticides, plastics, and industrial products, can interfere with hormone function and reproductive health. And it leads to infertility, pregnancy complications, birth defects, developmental abnormalities in offspring. So it's important. I don't know about you, but I'm real conscious about these plastics. Now, one of the things that we do is we compost our food scraps. Eggshells, yeah, I eat eggs, good eggs. Eggshells, scraps from our fruits, our vegetables, we compost. And I have a big compost pile right now, and that's going to go into our raised garden beds along with good soil so that we're keeping everything natural. So I know where it's coming from. So when I put it in me, I expect it to be good for me. So it's very important, you see all this plastic in the water system now. And when those plastics go into the water system, the fish get stuck in it or they eat it. And those molecules from the plastic that makes the plastic, they break down and they get into our water streams and our fish and our shellfish and all that kind of stuff. They digest that, and then guess what? We eat the fish and we digest what they eat. So again, that's pollution. So we got to be careful about pollution. We got to be vigilant about these plants that are growing in poor and minority neighborhoods. We got to be vigilant to make sure that our government is putting the restraints. One of the things that happened, I don't want to get political here, but one of the things that Obama was big on was making sure that those places that had deregulation started to be regulated again, because a lot of the big producers of poultry and energy, they were deregulated, so they could do anything. They didn't have any watch guards. So there was a lot of pollution going into the water, a lot of steroids going into the foods. So we got to make sure that we have EPA regulating these factories a lot more. But the main thing I say is start going natural. Start raising your own food or supporting some of your local farms. There's a lot of people now who are raising cows and chickens, and they are humanely slaughtering them. A lot of halal places, they pray over the food, and they raise it with good products, okay, because they're very responsible. Some of the things that the pollution will have an adverse effect on our body is our immune system also. Pollution can weaken the immune system, making individuals more susceptible to infections and diseases. Do you see how many folks now have these horrendous diseases? It's because of pollution and they eat the foods that they eat. I mean, listen, let me tell you something. I told you before when we had brother Daniel on, and hopefully we can get him back to talk about some more of this. But I'm not perfect in this. I believe in either the 90-10 or 95-5. And I say 90% good food and 10% But even with that 10% or that 5%, if I'm doing 95-5, that 10% or that 5%, I'm not going to go off the rails. I'm still going to make sure that, for the most part, I know what I'm putting in my body. Okay, I know what the ingredients are of that food, and I know where that food pretty much came from. But for me, man, I was my go-to was Doritos. Doritos and orange soda, man. That was my stress thing, man. I go to a QT or 7-Eleven, wherever you are, wherever they sell Doritos. I used to go get Doritos, and I found out what those Doritos were all about. I'm like, oh no, this is not good. This is not good at all. This is not good for me. And again, I go back to those of us who Christians. We believe in Christ, and we believe that we believe in one part of the Bible, but we don't believe in the whole Bible. And I'm gonna give you proof right now. I'm gonna give you proof right now, because our bodies are a gift from God. It's the temple of the Holy Spirit. This is where the Holy Spirit resides. So why would you put negative stuff where the Holy Spirit resides? Why would you take this gift from God and destroy it? It's like you getting a gift on Christmas from somebody, from one who loves you. Your mom or dad gives you a gift on Christmas, or your loved one gives you a gift on Christmas, and you take it and you put acid on it, you throw stuff on it, and you don't take care of it. You just whatever. That's what we're doing to our bodies, and that's what we're doing to God. We're saying, whatever, God, you can get another one, or you can make another one. We ought to take care of our bodies, and we ought to do the best that we can for ourselves, so that we can live well. So we can live well. Listen, okay, let me give you some Bible on this, because I'm talking about all this stuff, but let me give you some Bible. Got to throw some Bible in there. Genesis 2:15, it says, the Lord God took the man and put him in the garden in Eden to till it and keep it. That was our job. But we've gotten away from farming on our own. I mean, I ain't talking about going out and having 20 acres and a plow and all that kind of stuff. But what I am saying is you can grow very easy your plants, your vegetables, your fruits. I got fruit trees. I got plum trees that are blooming this year. I got pear trees that are blooming. I've got peach trees. I've got grapes. I've got an apple tree. It looks like it's going to bloom this year. Getting ready to plant all my fruits and vegetables, my peppers, my onions, you name it. My greens, my lettuce, you name it. I'm going to be like Shirley Caesar. You name it. I'm putting all that in there because I want my family to not only be healthy, but I want to show my kids, my children, and my grands the importance of growing your own and farming yourself. Genesis 1:28, it said, God blessed them, and God said to them, be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it. That means that we're supposed to have control over the earth and have dominion over the fish of the sea. That means we're responsible for our seas, the fish in it. We need to be responsible. So therefore, we need to take responsible for where the fish live in an ocean, and make sure that we're not polluting the ocean. Make sure that we're not putting plastics and all that junk in the oceans to kill the seas, and over the birds of the air. And the birds are dying because of pollution. One of the things that happened during COVID, and I love talking about the birds, but during COVID, man, I heard more birds chirping and in our yards because people were home. People weren't driving, so it wasn't a lot of pollution. Wasn't a lot of people out, so the birds had fresh air for a moment. So Genesis 1:28 says, have dominion over the fish, the seas, over the birds of the air, and over every living thing that moves upon the earth. But we've lost control. We've lost control over this fast-paced living. Psalm 24:1, it says, the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, the world and those who dwell within. So if we're going to believe the Bible, then let's do the Bible. Let's take care of what God gives us. Let's slow down. Let's eat right. Let's make sure of what we're putting into our bodies, this gift from God. Listen, overall health and well-being Chronic exposure to pollution can have a wide-ranging effects on overall health and well-being, contributing to increased disease. We don't need this. Increased morbidity and mortality rates, reduced quality of life, and socioeconomic disparities in health outcomes. This stuff is real. And it's essential to address pollution through comprehensive strategies such as reducing emissions, improving air and water quality, promoting sustainable practices, and adopting clean energy alternatives to mitigate its detrimental effects on human health. Now, you may say, oh man, that's kind of big, man, but what can little old me do about that? Glad you asked that question. It starts with you. It starts with us. It starts with us. I'm going to share a portion of one more video, if you don't mind, because I want to be clear on this, and I don't want to just talk about it. I want you to see it for yourself. Okay, I want you to see it for yourself. I've got one more video that I queued up here, and I want to show you a little bit of that. Oh, here it is. Here it is.
Grocery manufacturers.
This is olive oil, right? Wrong. Well, maybe some of it is, but this is actually a classic example of food fraud.
The extra virgin olive oils are
food fraud, y'all. Food
with
fraud.
cheap ones.
And fraudulent to sell something labeled
Why
as
you
something
gotta
else.
do your
Why
research,
is this
guys.
fish being
You
mislabeled?
have to do your
Parmesan
research.
cheese products
Don't
do
be
not
lazy.
contain
Do your
any
research on what you
Parmesan
put
cheese.
in your mouth.
There was no one brand that stood out as completely safe.
Wow, so we can't eat anything.
I guarantee you, anytime a product can be passed off as something more expensive, it will be. It's that simple.
Counterfeits, dilution, substitution, and mislabeling. Food fraud not only harms consumers' wallets, it puts their health and safety at risk.
We might not know
Put
the
your
overall
health
impact of
and
food
safety
fraud
at
because
risk.
so much of what fraudsters do is hidden from us and has been for centuries.
Some estimates say food fraud affects at least 1% of the global food industry, at a cost as high as $40 billion a year, according to the Food and Drug Administration.
Grocery Manufacturers of America estimated that 10% of the commercially available food in the United States is adulterated. That's 1 in 10. It means if you're not on that 8-item or less checkout line, you've got something in your cart when you leave the supermarket. That's
1 in
probably
10, y'all.
bogus.
1 in 10.
Here's how and why fake food sits secretly in our kitchen cabinets.
Look at this.
According to the FDA, food fraud is considered economically motivated adulteration, or EMA.
It's a monetary impact to the consumer and to the food manufacturers, but it's also a potential public safety, public health impact. It robs us of nutrients and can kill people and has done.
Larry Olmsted researched food fraud for years and published his book, Real Food, Fake Food, in 2016.
As I worked on this book, my definition of fake food became anytime what you buy is not what you think you're buying. Doesn't really matter whether it's legal or illegal. It's where you're being tricked. You're buying something that's not what you think it is.
The worst offenders can include seafood, meat, dairy, honey, alcohol, spices.
The fraud happens more with more expensive foods. Totally makes sense, right? There's a higher margin.
Take your extra virgin olive oil as an example. Fraud usually occurs here when a cheaper oil is added to the more expensive oil, and the label still reads 100% extra virgin olive oil. That's food fraud.
Olive oil has been adulterated for thousands of years because it is of high value and it is sought out.
They might flavor it with beta
That's
carotene
why I'm growing my
and
own
maybe
olive
color it with a
trees,
little
like
chlorophyll to make it a little more
olive oil.
green. And so then you've got a
Sounds crazy,
lower
but
quality, cheaper oil.
So both of these olive oils I got at the grocery store, and both of them are the store brand, but one cost way more than the other. This one had a label of 100% Mediterranean blend of extra virgin olive oil. So the olives were sourced from a bunch of different European countries, and it said it was packed in Italy, and there was no expiration date. And when I purchased this one was a 100% California extra virgin olive oil. First pressed, cold pressed, unfiltered, no artificial colors, preservatives, or flavors. And this one had an expiration date. It said that these olives were harvested in October, November 2022, and that it would be good on your shelf until August 2024. And it was much more expensive. Roughly twice as much as this olive oil. And this one had way more information about where this olive oil came from. Now let's look at the spice market as another one that's vulnerable to fraud. Think of an expensive spice like saffron. This tiny amount cost me $20 at the store. Saffron can be bulked up with some other material like plant stems and sold as the same, according to the FDA.
Popular spices like basil and chili powder from a range of different brands.
Anything that's kind of colored orange, brown, and ground up can be passed off as turmeric.
It's the ultimate bait and switch.
And then there's fish. The FDA says seafood fraud can occur when a less expensive species of fish is substituted for a more expensive species. After all, it's kind of hard to know what fish you're buying, right?
If you're an experienced chef or fishmonger, you can look at like a red snapper fillet and tell whether it's red snapper, but 99% of consumers can't. You know, most of the fish we eat is white fish. Every fillet looks pretty much the same, which is why there's so much substitution. The FDA is mandated by law to inspect 2% of the imported seafood, which is, I think, a very, very low bar.
In fact, the U.S. imports as much as 85% of its fish.
But federal fisheries enforcement is serious business. Agents from NOAA and U.S. Customs tear open a container filled with frozen fish from Thailand. They're looking for fraud.
First, it's important to understand the matrix that food fraud lives in. There's intentional and unintentional types of food risk. Unintentional risks include food safety and quality, like accidental foodborne illnesses.
CDC estimates about 50 million people a year contract a foodborne illness. Only 20%, 1 in 5 of those can be identified. So there's 40 million people a year getting sick from something they ate that we don't know what it is. And a good guess would.
Guys, are you hearing this? Are you hearing this? People are getting sick and they don't even know what it's from. They're getting sick, but they don't even know what it's from because the contaminants in the food, fake foods, because they mass produce so much, because we want things so much and so fast that they got to inject stuff into this to make it last. And that's one of the things that you can tell. Fake foods they last forever. How you think they last in your shelf for so long? When you buy organic and natural, they don't last long at all. You got to eat it like quickly because it'll go bad. You got to take this serious. We have to take this serious, guys. The pollution and when we talk about global warming, people talk about, oh, that's some political stuff. No, it's true. No, it's true. Real quick, let me give you 5 things that are global warming are affecting. Okay, so I'm not a beer drinker, but those who drink beer, the beer industry, they are suffering because of the 3 key ingredients that goes into beer. Brewers are they've encountered shortages of clean water. Now everybody needs clean water, but because of global warming, things are happening that are causing it to go bad. Their barley crops have been damaged by heavy rains. And then their hops have been plagued by drought. So that's 3 things that the beer industry. And then food prices are spiking. Heat waves and drought during the past several years have been connected to fluctuating wheat prices, including a 20% spike in European and United States markets during a 3-week period in 2018. That's because of pollution, global warming. It all goes together. Storm losses. They leave homes uninsured. I want you guys to listen to this because a lot of you who are listening today are impacted in these areas. Faced with a spate of devastating losses due to severe storms, some insurers have been curtailing their underwriting of homeowner policies. Watch this. The 2018 National Climate Assessment says that there are few private flood insurance policies available for coastal homeowners. Listen up, guys. The report adds that there are already indications that homes prone to flooding in such places like Atlantic City, New Jersey, Norfolk, Virginia, may become unsellable. I know this, we know this firsthand. We owned a home in Atlantic City that was part of that last flood. And it flooded so bad that it would have cost an astronomical amount to not only take out an underground heating tank that held kerosene, and then we couldn't get an insurance policy. So that is happening because of global warming, the effects of negative effects of global warming, which is part of pollution. It all goes hand in hand, guys. I'm not losing my mind and I'm a tree hugger or anything like that. I'm talking real stuff here. I'm talking stuff that we really have to start being responsible for. We have to start taking a real part of what we do with this earth, especially those who claim to be God's children. Another thing, the iconic Western forest is decimated. It's tragically easy to stand on many mountain peaks in Colorado and see nothing but dead trees for miles in every direction. The devastation results from warming winters that have allowed bark beetles to survive. When normal temperatures would have killed them, the beetles have swept through and destroyed an area of pine forest roughly the size of the state of Washington. And it gets worse. University of Colorado researchers have found that some populations of mountain pine beetles now produce 2 generations per year instead of the usual one. The population explosion will doom an ever greater area of lodge, pole, and ponderosa pine in coming years. This is the stuff we need, guys. This is the stuff that we need to survive. The coral reefs, man, this is huge. They're dying and oceans acidifying fast. Everything plays into something else. Australia's Great Barrier Reef is the size of 70 million soccer fields, which makes it all the more distressing that in 2016, listen to this, 2016, 93% of the Great Barrier Reef was hit by the worst coral bleaching ever witnessed. Now half the reef is dead or dying because corals feed on the now gone algae that also provided them with their color. And the reason that the coral died was because the warmings of the ocean. Now, what happens when the coral, how does that affect us when the coral reef dies? Well, the fish feed off the coral reef, okay? And if the ocean temperatures are rising, that means the fish are dying. It's real simple. Number 6, lakes are drying up and drinking water is at risk. You may have seen photos of dry lake beds in the western United States, and that's just one indication of a widespread problem. 1/3 of the world's major lakes and rivers are drying up, affecting groundwater wells for 3 billion people, according to the World Preservation Foundation. Here's a sampling. Bolivia's second largest lake has all but dried up due to drought. Iran's largest lake has all but disappeared. And Lake Chad, Africa's largest, has shrunk 80% in 30 years. Guys, this thing is real. Last but not least, now, hey, this is real big for me. Coffee production is at risk. Most coffee comes from the Arabica coffee tree. which thrives in cool mountain slopes. As climate change has raised temperatures in coffee growing regions, coffee growers have had to go farther up mountains to find cool air. Its short-term fix, Ethiopia, for example, a top Arabica producer, could lose up to 59% of its coffee growing area to climate change by the end of the century. Man, that's bad, man. Let me tell you, I don't know if you guys have ever had Ethiopian Yirgacheffe coffee. I would hate to see that go. So globally, we could lose up to 50% of land suitable for growing coffee by 2050. Guys, this stuff is real. You know, I read to you a lot of stuff that may seem like, well, that don't really bother me. It should. It should. Everything I talked about was pollution, talked about global warming, talked about artificial ingredients in our foods, and how we can cut back on some of the dis-ease that we are dealing with and our families are dealing with, our children are dealing with. It's real simple. Read before you purchase. Think about what it is that you want to put into your body. And when you eat it, before you eat it, think about it. Will this provide my body what it needs to perform in the way that God created it to be? You see, I have a cough right now. Everything I'm doing is natural. I'm taking vitamin C. I'm taking all natural ingredients in order to get rid of this cough. Okay. Sometimes we do have to take medications, but thank God that God has blessed people with the mindset to be able to prescribe things to help us get better. And then once we get better, that means that we need to do better. The only way we want to know this, the only way we want to do this is we've got to take an active part in our health. We've got to take an active part in our environment. And we owe God that. We owe God that. Again, you can't pick and choose what kind of Christian you're going to be, what kind of Muslim you're going to be. Whatever religion you deal with, all of it deals with being a good steward over our earth and over our bodies. That's it, Gary. Saving our world equals saving our lives. Okay? I tell you, let your food be your medicine so that your medicine does not have to be your food. Guys, I want you to go back, take a look at all this. I know I provided you a lot of information tonight, but the reason I do this is because I want this show to be one of education and entertainment. I want you to do better. I want us to all win. This is why I take the time and do the research to bring you this stuff so that you can at least know how to do if you choose to do. So I thank you for your time tonight. Go back, take a look at this, share it with somebody. Tell them, take a look at this. Pastor Jeff's on here, Dr. Jeff's on here, talking some stuff, and it might help somebody along the way. Whatever you do, here's what I want you to do. Go out, meet needs, and solve problems. How you do that? It's real simple. You got to have love for one another. Thank you, Sister Hope. Appreciate you. Appreciate you, Scott. Appreciate you, Cornell. Appreciate you, Kiva. Appreciate you, Karen. Appreciate you, Scott. Appreciate you, Marilyn. Appreciate you, Sherry. Appreciate you, Kathy. Appreciate you, Pam. Thank you all for your comments. Thank you all for viewing. Listen, can't wait to see you next week. Got a great guest coming on. Be prepared for some instructions on life. All right. Y'all go ahead, meet needs, solve problems. God bless you. You know I love you. Take care. Peace.